These are the creepiest Scooby Doo mysteries. Starting with number 12. In Season 1, Episode 21, Mayor Jones hires the gang to investigate after a Persian-themed temple in Crystal Cove's new amusement park is haunted by a terrifying manticore. But this isn't your typical amusement park monster. This beast has a lion's head, bat wings, and a scorpion tail, and it's violently attacking park patrons. The manticore's design is absolutely gruesome. Its lion head roars with ancient fury, its bat wings create shadows that seem to move independently, and that scorpion tail strikes with deadly precision. When it attacks, visitors are left traumatized and injured, turning what should be a fun family outing into a nightmare. The Persian temple setting adds an exotic, mystical atmosphere that feels completely out of place in a modern amusement park. The architecture is foreboding, with carved stone faces that seem to watch the gang as they investigate. Ancient symbols cover the walls, and the air itself feels heavy with supernatural energy. What makes the manticore particularly unsettling is how it seems to blend different animal instincts into one predator. It has the hunting intelligence of a lion, the aerial advantage of a bat, and the venomous strike of a scorpion. There's no escaping its varied forms of attack. The gang has to navigate through the temple's maze-like corridors while being stalked by this hybrid monster. Every corner could hide the creature. Every shadow could conceal its approach. The narrow passages amplify the claustrophobic fear of being trapped with a predator. The attacks on park patrons are shown in disturbing detail for a kids' show. People are left screaming and running in panic, their day of fun turned into a traumatic experience. The manticore doesn't just scare, it actively hunts and hurts people. The beast's design is gruesome, but the clue-laden daylight theme park setting and tongue-in-cheek moments soften its impact, making it the least unsettling on this list. But even the least creepy mystery on this countdown is about to get much more disturbing. In Season 1, Episode 12, the gang visits Darrow University, only to discover a monstrous Chargar Gothicon stalking campus. But this isn't just any monster. It's the manifestation of Professor Hatecraft's Lovecraftian novels and the subject of a dangerous cult, where reality itself begins to blur. The cosmic horror tone is completely unique for Scooby-Doo. Instead of dealing with a person in a mask, the gang is confronting something that might not even be fully real. Chargar Gothicon exists somewhere between fiction and reality, between nightmare and truth. Professor Hatecraft's novels have somehow brought this entity into the real world, and the campus is filled with unnerving, surreal scenes. Students walk around in a trance-like state, their eyes vacant and their movements mechanical. The normal college atmosphere is replaced by something deeply unsettling. The cult aspects make everything worse. These aren't just random attacks, there's a group of people actively worshipping this cosmic horror, trying to bring it fully into our reality. They perform strange rituals and speak in languages that hurt to hear. The university setting becomes a maze of terror. Lecture halls echo with inhuman sounds, library books contain knowledge that shouldn't exist, and the campus itself seems to shift and change when no one's looking. Students are attacked by something that defies all logic and reason. What makes Chargar Gothicon particularly frightening is that it represents the fear of the unknown and unknowable. This isn't a monster you can fight or understand. It's a force of cosmic horror that exists beyond human comprehension. The gang struggles to even describe what they're seeing. Their usual logical approach to mysteries breaks down when faced with something that operates by rules they can't understand. Reality itself becomes unreliable. The cosmic horror tone is unique for Scooby-Doo, but the abstract nature of the threat keeps the fear at a conceptual level. But abstract fears are nothing compared to the very real terror of a vengeful ghost. In Season 1, Episode 6, a mysterious girl named Alice arrives at Crystal Cove High and quickly catches Fred's eye. But Daphne's suspicions are about to be proven horribly right. As boys begin vanishing, Alice's ghostly alter ego reveals a tragic backstory that will haunt the gang long after the mystery is solved. Alice seems like the perfect girl at first, beautiful, charming, and interested in Fred. But there's something off about her from the beginning. She appears at the school with no background, no history, and no explanation for why she's there. Daphne's jealousy quickly turns to genuine concern. The disappearances start small. A boy here, a boy there, all of them last seen with Alice. But as the pattern becomes clear, the true horror emerges. Alice isn't just dating these boys, she's kidnapping them, dragging them away to some unknown fate. Her ghostly alter ego is a vision of tragic beauty turned monstrous. She appears in a tattered prom dress, her face pale and haunting, her eyes filled with centuries of loneliness and rage. The contrast between her beautiful human form and her terrifying ghost form is deeply unsettling. The backstory reveals the source of her pain. Alice died long ago, probably on prom night, probably after being rejected or betrayed by someone she loved. Now she's trapped in an eternal cycle of trying to find the perfect prom date, only to destroy them when they inevitably disappoint her. The prom visuals are particularly chilling. Alice recreates the dance she never got to have, forcing her kidnapped victims to dance with her in some twisted recreation of the night that killed her. The romantic setting becomes a prison of perpetual disappointment. The twist involving Mr. E adds extra layers of mystery and danger. Alice isn't just a random ghost, she's connected to the larger supernatural conspiracies surrounding Crystal Cove. Her tragedy is part of a much bigger, more sinister pattern. The tragic, haunted backstory and lonely prom visuals are chilling, but the classic ghost mystery structure lightens the horror. Still, lonely ghosts are nothing compared to an entire army of the undead. In Season 2, Episode 8, the eerie mountain town of Whitestone draws Daphne and the gang into a centuries-old legend, but they're about to discover that some legends are terrifyingly real. The ghostly Lilith and her army of skeletal conquistadors are about to turn their investigation into a fight for survival. Whitestone is the kind of town where strangers aren't welcome and secrets run deep. The locals act with unsettling devotion to something they won't name, and their eyes hold a fanatical gleam that suggests they've seen things that normal people shouldn't see. The legend of Lilith dates back centuries, but it's not just a story. She's a real entity who commands an army of skeletal conquistadors, the reanimated remains of Spanish soldiers who died horrible deaths in the mountains. These aren't just bones held together by supernatural force. They're the vengeful spirits of men who died in agony. The forest setting amplifies the supernatural dread. Glowing eyes watch from between the trees, and the gang feels constantly surrounded by unseen threats. Every step deeper into the woods takes them further from safety and closer to something ancient and malevolent. The conquistadors move with military precision, their bone armor clattering as they march in formation. They carry rusted weapons and wear the remnants of their uniforms, making them look like a nightmare version of historical reenactors. Their coordinated attacks show they retain their military training even in death. Lilith herself is a figure of tragic beauty corrupted by centuries of rage. She commands her undead army with the authority of someone who has nothing left to lose. Her connection to the mountain and its dark history makes her more than just a ghost. She's a force of nature. The townsfolk's cult-like devotion to Lilith creates an atmosphere of paranoia and fear. The gang can't trust anyone, and they're constantly aware that they're outnumbered by people who would rather serve an ancient evil than help them. Glowing eyes in the forest and a constant sense of entrapment heighten the supernatural dread, but the focus on myth and family legacy balances out the horror. However, mythical threats pale in comparison to the very real terror of drowning in darkness. Okay. In Season 2, Episode 11, Mystery Inc. descends to the ocean floor to help Cassidy Williams, but they're about to face something far worse than any land-based monster. Vicious marine robots and monstrous mutated deep-sea fish are waiting for them in the crushing depths of the ocean. The underwater setting creates an immediate sense of claustrophobia and vulnerability. The gang is completely out of their element, dependent on bulky diving equipment and limited air supplies. Every breath could be their last, and the crushing pressure of the deep ocean is a constant threat. The marine robots are designed for underwater combat, moving through the water with mechanical precision. Their red eyes cut through the darkness like searchlights, and their metallic limbs are equipped with cutting tools and weapons. They're perfectly adapted for their environment, while the gang struggles just to move. The mutated deep-sea fish are even more horrifying. These aren't just big fish, they're nightmarish creatures that have been twisted by whatever dark forces lurk in the ocean depths. Their teeth are like razors, their eyes are alien and intelligent, and their movements are unnaturally aggressive. The harrowing sequences of being hunted through cramped, waterlogged tunnels create an almost unbearable sense of tension. The gang has to navigate through underwater passages while being pursued by enemies that can move much faster than they can. Every turn could be a dead end. Every shadow could hide a predator. The fear of drowning adds another layer of terror. The gang's air supplies are limited, and their heavy equipment makes them slow and clumsy. They're constantly aware that they're fighting not just monsters, but time itself. The environment itself becomes an enemy. The ocean floor is littered with debris and obstacles. The water is murky and disorienting, and the pressure makes every movement difficult. The gang feels completely helpless and out of their depth. The sudden, shocking death of a key character elevates the stakes dramatically. When Cassidy Williams dies, it proves that the threats they're facing are genuinely lethal. This isn't just a scary adventure, it's a fight for survival with real consequences. Harrowing sequences of being hunted and the fear of drowning ramp up the anxiety, with a shocking death elevating the stakes. But even the terror of drowning can't compare to the horror of losing your mind. In Season 1, Episode 16, Aphrodite, a seemingly immortal goddess with mind control pheromones, invades Crystal Cove, but her power isn't just supernatural, it's psychological. She's about to turn the entire town into her personal army of love-struck zombies. The mind control aspect is particularly disturbing because it strips away people's free will and agency. Ordinary townspeople fall under Aphrodite's spell, becoming zombie-like and acting out obsessive love for one another. They lose all reason, all self-control, all sense of who they really are. Aphrodite's pheromones work on a biological level, making her influence almost impossible to resist. People don't just choose to obey her, their bodies betray them, flooding them with artificial feelings of love and devotion. The loss of control is complete and terrifying. The cult-like atmosphere that develops is deeply unsettling. People abandon their families, their jobs, their entire lives to serve Aphrodite's whims. They speak in monotone voices, move with mechanical precision, and show no recognition of their former selves. The gang watches in horror as people they know and care about are transformed into mindless servants. Friends become enemies, authority figures become threats, and the entire social structure of Crystal Cove collapses into chaos. Aphrodite herself is beautiful but alien, her perfections somehow more unsettling than any monster. She speaks with the casual cruelty of someone who has never been denied anything, and her power over others is absolute and terrifying. The obsessive love behavior is particularly disturbing. People don't just follow Aphrodite, they become violently possessive of her attention, fighting each other for her favor. The emotion that should bring people together instead tears them apart. The gang realizes they're fighting not just a monster, but an entire town full of people who would kill them without hesitation. Every familiar face becomes a potential threat. Every trusted friend becomes an enemy. The unnatural, cult-like atmosphere with people abandoning all reason taps into real anxieties about mobs and psychological loss of control. But losing your mind is nothing compared to facing an unstoppable force of destruction. In Season 2, Episode 17, a wave of mutated red-eyed cattle, engineered by Professor Pericles, stampede through Crystal Cove. But these aren't ordinary farm animals. They're bone-white nightmares with skull faces and bee DNA, and they're about to turn the entire town into a feeding ground. The horrible herd's design is visually nightmarish. Their bone-white skulls are fused with organic bee components, creating creatures that look like they crawled out of a fever dream. Their red eyes glow with malevolent intelligence, and their movements are unnaturally coordinated. The stampede creates an apocalyptic atmosphere that's rarely seen in children's animation. These creatures don't just attack, they destroy everything in their path with unstoppable force. Buildings crumble, cars are crushed, and the very landscape of Crystal Cove is transformed into a wasteland. The rural setting amplifies the horror. The gang finds themselves in open farmland with nowhere to hide, being pursued by creatures that can run faster than any vehicle. The wide-open spaces that should represent freedom instead become a killing field. The cattle's bee DNA gives them hive mind intelligence, making them far more dangerous than individual animals. They coordinate their attacks, set traps, and show tactical thinking that makes them nearly impossible to evade. They're not just predators, they're an army. The feeding behavior is particularly disturbing. These creatures don't just kill, they consume everything, leaving nothing behind. They can devour buildings, vehicles, and anything else that gets in their way. The town itself becomes their meal. The frantic chase sequences create a sense of relentless terror. The gang is constantly running, constantly looking over their shoulders, constantly aware that these creatures are gaining ground. There's no time to rest, no time to think, no time to plan. The episode's apocalyptic tone suggests that this might be the end of everything the gang has fought to protect. Crystal Cove itself is being destroyed, and there seems to be no way to stop the destruction. The herd's design and sense of unstoppable destruction create an apocalyptic horror rarely seen in kids' animation. But even an unstoppable herd can't compare to the terror of being hunted by swarms of insects. In Season 1, Episode 13, employees at a chemical company are being attacked by a human-sized cicada. But this isn't just any insect monster. It controls swarms of insects and has already caused one victim to flatline, a rare moment hinting at actual death in the series. The cicada creature itself is a nightmare of insect horror. Human-sized but still recognizably insect, it moves with the jerky, unnatural motions of a bug scaled up to terrifying proportions. Its wings create a deafening buzzing sound that seems to drive people mad. The body horror elements are particularly disturbing. The creature's exoskeleton glistens with an oily sheen. Its compound eyes reflect light in an alien way, and its mandibles click with mechanical precision. It's a perfect example of the uncanny valley, familiar enough to recognize but wrong enough to be deeply unsettling. The swarm control makes the creature exponentially more dangerous. It doesn't just attack individually, it commands armies of normal-sized insects to do its bidding. The gang finds themselves surrounded by clouds of buzzing, biting, stinging creatures that seem to act with unified purpose. The sequence where a victim flatlines after a shower ambush is genuinely shocking for a Scooby-Doo episode. The show rarely hints at actual death, but this episode crosses that line, making the threat feel genuinely lethal rather than just scary. The chemical company's setting adds an element of environmental horror. The sterile industrial environment becomes a breeding ground for nightmare creatures, suggesting that human interference with nature has consequences that we can't control. The relentless attacks create a sense of paranoia and helplessness. The gang never knows when the next swarm will appear, never knows if they're safe even in seemingly secure locations. The shower attack proves that nowhere is truly safe from the creature's reach. The infestations are shown in skin-crawling detail. Insects pour out of vents, emerge from pipes, and seem to materialize from thin air. The gang is constantly brushing bugs off their skin, constantly swatting at things that might not even be there. Cronenberg-like body horror and insect phobia blend in a sequence of relentless attacks, infestations, and skin-crawling close-ups. But even the horror of insects can't compare to the universal terror of a silent, weeping clown. In Season 2, Episode 1, a terrifying silent clown with tears streaking its makeup and a frozen smile begins haunting Crystal Cove. But this isn't just any monster. It's targeting Shaggy specifically, triggering childhood memories that reveal the true source of his deepest fears. The clown's design taps into the universal fear of clowns but amplifies it with genuinely disturbing details. Its makeup is smeared and running, creating the impression of a face that's melting or crying. The frozen smile never changes, never responds to anything, making it feel more like a mask than a real expression. The silence makes the clown even more unnerving. It never speaks, never makes any sound except for the soft padding of its feet. This absence of communication makes it impossible to predict or understand, turning every encounter into a nightmare of uncertainty. The tears are the most unsettling detail. They stream constantly down the clown's face, but the expression never changes. It's crying, but it's also smiling, creating a contradiction that the human brain struggles to process. The tears suggest profound sadness, but the smile suggests something much more sinister. Shaggy's childhood memories add a personal dimension to the horror. This isn't just a random monster. It's something that connects to his deepest psychological wounds. The clown represents trauma that has been buried but never resolved. The clown's inexplicable nature makes it impossible to fight or escape. It appears without warning, disappears without explanation, and seems to operate by rules that no one understands. Traditional problem-solving approaches fail completely. The psychological terror is more effective than any physical threat. The clown doesn't need to hurt anyone. Its mere presence is enough to create panic and despair. It proves that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones that attack your mind rather than your body. The childhood trauma angle makes the horror more personal and realistic. Everyone has fears that stem from childhood experiences, and the clown represents the way those fears can resurface when we least expect them. The clown's inexplicable nature, combined with the universal fear of clowns, delivers genuine nightmare fuel through psychological menace. But even nightmare clowns can't compare to the horror of an entire town turned against you. In Season 1, Episode 2, the gang gets stranded overnight in Gatorsburg, a former tourist town that's been taken over by something far worse than any tourist trap. The town is now inhabited by mutant alligator people, and the gang is about to discover that some places are abandoned for very good reasons. Gatorsburg was once a thriving tourist destination, but now it's a decaying ghost town filled with the echoes of happier times. The abandoned buildings and empty streets create an atmosphere of loss and decay that's deeply unsettling even before the monsters appear. The alligator people are a perfect example of uncanny valley horror. They're human enough to be recognizable as former people, but reptilian enough to be completely alien. Their slow, deliberate movements suggest intelligence, but their cold, predatory eyes show no trace of humanity. The backwoods horror atmosphere is amplified by the Southern Gothic setting. This is the kind of place where bad things happen to outsiders, where the normal rules of civilization don't apply. The gang realizes they're not just lost, they're trapped in a place that doesn't want them to leave. The mutant alligator people pursue the gang with relentless patience. They don't need to hurry because they know the gang has nowhere to go. This creates a sense of inevitable doom that's more terrifying than any jump scare. The abandoned buildings become a maze of terror. Every room could hide an attacker. Every doorway could be a trap. The gang has to navigate through a town that's been turned into a hunting ground for creatures that know every hiding place. The sense of inescapability is overwhelming. The gang's van breaks down, the roads are blocked, and the swamp surrounds the town like a natural prison. They're completely cut off from the outside world, trapped with monsters that have all the time in the world to hunt them. The attack sequences are genuinely frightening because they feel inevitable. The gang can run, they can hide, but they can't escape. The alligator people are patient predators who know that exhaustion and fear will eventually make their prey vulnerable. Their slow, relentless pursuit through abandoned buildings and uncanny valley appearance evoke backwoods horror, with claustrophobic setting and inescapability making their attacks truly frightening. But even being trapped with monsters can't compare to the horror of corrupted innocence. In Season 1, Episode 5, a mysterious masked creature named Quie Orifico turns the children of Crystal Cove into blank-eyed, slow-moving monsters. But this isn't just another mind control plot. He's using an eerie flute to corrupt the town's most innocent residents, turning them into emotionless pursuers of their own families. The sight of children turned into monsters is deeply disturbing on a primal level. These aren't adults who can be reasoned with or understood. They're kids who should be playing and laughing. But instead, they're hunting the adults who love them. The corruption of innocence is one of the most effective horror techniques. Quie Horrifico's flute creates an hypnotic melody that seems to bypass conscious thought and speak directly to something deeper in the children's minds. The music itself becomes a weapon, turning the normally comforting sound of a flute into something sinister and threatening. The blank-eyed children move with mechanical precision, their faces empty of all emotion and personality. They're still recognizable as the kids they used to be, but there's nothing human left in their expressions. They've become shells of themselves, puppets controlled by an unknown force. The adult's powerlessness adds another layer of horror. Parents watch helplessly as their own children become threats, unable to hurt them, but also unable to help them. The normal protective instincts that adults have toward children become liabilities when those children are the enemy. The children's pursuit of their families creates scenes of domestic horror. Houses that should be safe havens become battlegrounds. Bedrooms where children should be sleeping become sites of siege. The most fundamental relationships in human society are turned upside down. The slow-moving nature of the children makes them even more terrifying. They don't need to hurry because they know the adults can't really fight back. Their deliberate, methodical approach creates a sense of inevitable doom that's more frightening than any sudden attack. The psychological terror comes from the way the episode forces adults to confront their worst fears about their children. What if the people you love most in the world suddenly turned against you? What if your own child became your greatest threat? The psychological fear of corrupted innocence, combined with chilling visuals of the children, makes this one of the series' darkest episodes. But even the horror of corrupted children can't compare to the ultimate nightmare that's been stalking Crystal Cove. In Season 1, Episode 26, the climactic villain known as the Freak emerges, but this isn't just another monster of the week. This limping, gas-masked figure is tied to the deepest, most traumatic secrets of Crystal Cove, the original Mystery Incorporated, and Fred's own family history. The Freak's design is a masterclass in psychological horror. The gas mask obscures any human features, creating a faceless antagonist that represents pure malevolence. The limping gait suggests injury or deformity, making every appearance feel like a violation of the natural order. The connection to the original Mystery Incorporated adds layers of generational trauma. This isn't just a random monster. It's something that has been festering in Crystal Cove for decades, feeding on the town's secrets and growing stronger with each passing year. The Freak's stalking is relentless and personal. It doesn't just attack randomly, It targets specific people with specific knowledge, suggesting an intelligence and purpose that goes far beyond simple monster behavior. Every encounter feels like part of a larger, more sinister plan. The revelation of Fred's connection to the freak transforms the mystery from a simple investigation into a deeply personal nightmare. Fred isn't just solving a case. He's uncovering truths about his own family that will shatter his understanding of who he is. The gas mask serves multiple purposes as a horror device. It dehumanizes the freak, making it impossible to connect with or understand. It also suggests chemical warfare or industrial disaster, tapping into modern fears about environmental contamination and technological horror. The generational aspects of the mystery create a sense of inherited doom. The current Mystery Inc. isn't just dealing with a new threat. They're facing the consequences of events that happened before they were born. The past is literally hunting them. The freak's presence is tied to real, life-altering consequences that extend far beyond the usual Scooby-Doo formula. Characters die, families are destroyed, and the very foundations of Crystal Cove are shaken. This isn't just a scary story. It's a tragedy. More than a masked figure, the freak wields true malice, blending personal horror, emotional betrayal, and a palpable sense of danger that lingers through the series finale. Click that next video to see the most heartbreaking Scooby-Doo moments that made fans cry.